The rain hammered against the windshield of Jake Harrison's 2015 Honda Accord as he navigated through the neon-lit streets of downtown Nashville. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night in late October, and the city glowed with its usual electric energy. Honky-tonks spilling music and laughter onto Broadway, tourists stumbling between bars, and street performers packing up their gear to escape the downpour. Jake barely noticed anymore. 5 years of driving these same streets had turned the capital of country music into nothing more than a familiar maze of one-way roads and GPS pings. His phone chimed with a new ride request. Airport drop-off. Estimated fare, $32. Jake accepted it immediately and made a U-turn on Fifth Avenue, his worn tires splashing through puddles that reflected the amber glow of streetlights. The pickup location was the Omni Hotel, an upscale establishment where Jake often collected business travelers and occasionally celebrities trying to slip out of town unnoticed. Jake pulled up to the covered entrance and glanced at his reflection in the rearview mirror. Dark circles shadowed his blue eyes, evidence of another sleepless night worrying about Emma's upcoming parent-teacher conference and the overdue electric bill sitting on his kitchen counter. At 34, he looked closer to 40. Life had a way of aging you when you stopped living for yourself. A man in his late 50s emerged from the hotel lobby, rolling a compact carry-on suitcase behind him. He wore an expensive-looking gray overcoat and moved with the unhurried confidence of someone accustomed to first-class lounges and corner offices. His silver hair was impeccably styled despite the rain, and his face carried the weathered dignity of a man who had built something significant with his own hands. "Richard?" Jake asked through the lowered passenger window. "That's me," the man replied, offering a polite nod before opening the rear door and settling into the back seat. He placed his suitcase beside him and immediately pulled out his phone, his face illuminated by the bluish glow of the screen. Jake merged back into traffic, heading toward Interstate 40. The rain intensified, drumming a steady rhythm on the car's roof. For the first few minutes, silence filled the vehicle, the comfortable kind that existed between strangers with no obligation to entertain each other. Jake preferred these quiet rides. They gave him space to think, to exist without performance or pretense. But then Richard's gaze shifted from his phone to the front passenger seat, where Jake's battered acoustic guitar rested in its worn canvas case. The instrument was a 1987 Yamaha FG335, its finish scratched and faded, the case plastered with stickers from dive bars and music venues that no longer existed. Jake had forgotten it was there. It had become as much a fixture of his car as the air freshener dangling from the mirror. "You play?" Richard asked, breaking the silence. His voice was deeper than Jake expected, textured with decades of cigarettes and whiskey. Though Jake detected neither smell in the car, Jake's shoulders tensed slightly. "Used to," he replied, keeping his eyes fixed on the rain-slicked highway ahead. "It just rides around with me now. Habit, I guess." Richard leaned forward slightly, studying the guitar case with genuine interest. "What kind of music?" "Country. Traditional country, mostly. Some folk." Jake's responses were clipped, defensive walls built from years of abandoning a dream that once defined him. "This is Nashville," Richard observed with a slight smile. "Everyone here either plays music, wants to play music, or gave up playing music. Which category are you?" The question landed like a stone in still water, rippling through Jake's carefully constructed defenses. He glanced in the rearview mirror and met Richard's eyes. They were sharp, intelligent, but not unkind. There was something about this stranger that felt disarming, as if he possessed an innate ability to see through the protective layers people wore. "The third one," Jake admitted quietly. "Gave it up about 8 years ago." "Why?" Jake's jaw tightened. The question was simple, but the answer was anything but. Life happened. Priorities changed. Had a daughter to raise. Richard nodded slowly, processing this information. He set his phone face down on the seat beside him, giving Jake his full attention. A gesture that felt increasingly rare in a world of constant digital distraction. "Must have been good if you still carry the guitar around." "I was all right," Jake said, downplaying the truth. In reality, he had been more than all right. At 26, he had played Nashville's most respected songwriter nights, had 3 original songs recorded by minor label artists, and was 2 weeks away from signing his first publishing deal when Lisa discovered she was pregnant. Everything changed after that. Emma became his universe, and the music industry, with its late nights, financial instability, and relentless rejection, became incompatible with fatherhood. Then, Lisa died, and the guitar became a painful reminder of everything he had lost. His wife, his dreams, his younger self. The windshield wipers scraped rhythmically across the glass. Jake took the exit toward Nashville International Airport, the terminal lights appearing like a distant constellation through the rain. They had maybe 10 minutes left together, and then this passenger would disappear into the anonymous flow of American air travel. Just another face Jake would forget by tomorrow. "Can I hear something?" Richard asked suddenly. Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What?" "A song. One of yours." Richard's tone was neither demanding nor pleading. It was simply curious, the way someone might ask to see a photograph or hear a story. "I don't really do that anymore," Jake deflected, his heart rate accelerating despite himself. "I'm not asking you to perform at the Grand Ole Opry," Richard said with gentle humor. "Just one song, for a captive audience of one. Consider it a favor to a bored business traveler who spent the last 3 days in windowless conference rooms." Jake should have said no. Every logical part of his brain screamed to politely decline. Drop this passenger off and continue with his predictable, safe existence. But something in Richard's voice, a genuine quality that Jake rarely encountered in his transactional daily interactions, made him hesitate. "There's a scenic overlook about 2 miles from here," Jake heard himself say. "Off Old Hickory Boulevard. I could pull over there for a few minutes." "You'd miss your flight, though." Richard checked his watch, a vintage Rolex that caught the dashboard lights. "My flight doesn't leave until 2:30. I have time." Jake's mouth felt dry as he took the next exit, his decision made before his conscious mind could overrule it. He navigated through a residential area until he reached the overlook, a small paved lot that jutted out from a hillside, offering a panoramic view of the Cumberland River Valley below. At this hour, in this weather, the place was deserted. He pulled into a parking space facing the valley and killed the engine. The rain had softened to a steady drizzle, pattering gently against the car's exterior. City lights twinkled in the distance, Nashville sprawling across the Tennessee landscape like a jeweled blanket. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the guitar case. He hadn't played for anyone in 3 years, not since Emma's 5th birthday party, when he sang "Happy Birthday," with stiff, mechanical motions that his daughter was too young to recognize as grief. He unzipped the case and lifted out the Yamaha, its familiar weight settling into his arms like an old friend returning from a long absence. The strings were out of tune. Jake spent a minute adjusting them by ear, his muscle memory intact despite the years of dormancy. Richard waited patiently in the back seat, watching through the rearview mirror with an expression Jake couldn't quite read. "This is something I wrote a long time ago," Jake said quietly, his voice barely audible over the rain. "After my wife passed. I never played it for anyone." He didn't wait for Richard's response. His fingers found the opening chords, a simple progression in G major that descended into E minor. creating a melancholic tension that perfectly captured the feeling of loving someone who existed only in memory. Then he began to sing. His voice was rough at first, rusty from disuse, but it warmed and strengthened as the verses unfolded. The song was called Emma's Eyes, and it told the story of a man raising his daughter alone, seeing his dead wife's face in their child's features, finding both unbearable pain and redemptive hope in that resemblance. The lyrics were specific and honest, mentioning Emma's habit of humming while she colored, the way she slept with Lisa's old cardigan, the parent-daughter breakfast ritual they maintained every Sunday at the same diner where Jake had proposed. The music filled the small car, transforming it into an intimate concert hall. Jake closed his eyes and let the song pour out of him. 3 years of suppressed emotion channeled through 6 strings and a worn voice. When he reached the final chorus, "She's got her mama's way of seeing light where I see rain. She's teaching me to love again through all this pain." His voice cracked slightly, but he pushed through to the last chord, letting it ring out until it faded into silence. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Jake kept his eyes fixed on the guitar in his lap, suddenly self-conscious and vulnerable, as if he had stripped naked in front of a stranger. The silence stretched on, broken only by the rain's gentle percussion. Then he heard it, a quiet sniff from the back seat. Jake glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Richard wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. His composure cracked open by the raw honesty of the song. "Jesus," Richard breathed, his voice thick with emotion. That was real. That was the most authentic thing I've heard in years." Jake's throat tightened. He carefully returned the guitar to its case, needing something to do with his hands. "Thanks. Like I said, it's pretty rusty." "Rusty?" Richard leaned forward, his face intense. "That wasn't rusty. That was lived in. That was earned. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Genuine emotion in music? Everyone in this town is chasing authenticity, like it's some kind of formula they can reverse engineer. But you actually have it." Jake shook his head, uncomfortable with the praise. "It's just one song, written in a dark place. Doesn't mean much." "It means everything," Richard insisted. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card, extending it between the seats. "I need you to call this number. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp." Jake took the card hesitantly and read it by the dashboard light. His eyes widened as the words registered. Richard Coleman, CEO, founder Coleman Records, Nashville. TN. The guitar case slipped slightly in Jake's grip. Coleman Records. He knew the name. Everyone in Nashville's music scene knew it. Coleman Records had launched the careers of some of the most successful traditional country artists of the past 2 decades. They were the label that said no to pop country crossovers and yes to fiddles, steel guitars, and stories about real people living real lives. And Jake had just played an unrehearsed, out-of-tune song for its founder in the back of his Uber. I'm not looking for," Jake stammered, his mind racing. "I appreciate the kind words, Mr. Coleman, but I'm just a driver now. I have a daughter. Responsibilities. I can't just—" "I'm not asking you to abandon your daughter," Richard interrupted gently. "I'm asking you to call me. One phone conversation. If you decide it's not for you, I'll respect that. But Jake," he paused, making sure he had the driver's full attention. "What you just shared with me is what the world needs to hear. What I've been searching for. Don't let fear make this decision for you." Jake stared at the business card, his thumb tracing the embossed lettering. Part of him wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all, the impossible coincidence, the fairy tale quality of being discovered while driving a stranger to the airport. But another part of him, a part he had buried deep beneath layers of responsibility and grief, stirred with something that felt dangerously like hope. "I'll think about it," Jake finally managed. "That's all I'm asking." Richard settled back into his seat and checked his watch again. "We should probably get to the airport now. I don't want to miss that flight after all." The rest of the drive passed in contemplative silence. When Jake pulled up to the departure terminal, Richard collected his suitcase and opened the door, letting in a gust of cool, rain-scented air. He paused before stepping out, turning back to look at Jake one more time. "The number on that card is my direct line," Richard said. "Not an assistant, not a receptionist. Me. I don't give that out often. 9 a.m. Monday. I'll be waiting." Then he was gone, disappearing through the automatic doors into the fluorescent brightness of the terminal. Jake sat motionless in the pickup lane, watching the place where Richard Coleman had vanished, the business card still clutched in his hand. His phone chimed with another ride request. Downtown pickup. Estimated fare, $12. Jake stared at the notification, then at the business card, then at his guitar case in the passenger seat. He thought about Emma sleeping peacefully at home, watched over by Mrs. Patricia Kowalski, their 68-year-old neighbor who babysat whenever Jake worked night shifts. He thought about the stack of bills on his counter, the parent-teacher conference next week, the careful budget that kept them afloat, but never ahead. He thought about Lisa and the dreams they had shared before cancer stole her away at 31 years old. And for the first time in 3 years, Jake Harrison allowed himself to think about music, not as a lost past, but as a possible future. He accepted the ride request and pulled away from the terminal, slipping Richard Coleman's business card into his shirt pocket, right over his heart, where it rested like a promise or a threat, or perhaps both at once. Jake didn't sleep that night. After dropping off his last passenger at 3:15 a.m., a drunk bachelorette party returning from Broadway, he drove home through empty streets, his mind replaying the evening's encounter on an endless loop. By the time he pulled into the driveway of his modest rental house in the Antioch neighborhood, dawn was beginning to soften the eastern sky from black to deep purple. The house was a small, 2-bedroom bungalow with peeling yellow paint and a chain-link fence that desperately needed replacing. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Or at least, it would be until the lease renewal came due in 3 months. Jake unlocked the front door as quietly as possible, not wanting to wake Mrs. Kowalski, who was snoring gently on the living room couch, bathed in the blue glow of late-night infomercials. He gently shook her shoulder. "Mrs. K, I'm home." The elderly woman stirred, her cloudy eyes blinking open behind thick-framed glasses. Patricia Kowalski had lived next door for 43 years, raising 4 children in a house that now felt too large for her widowed existence. She had adopted Jake and Emma as surrogate family, refusing payment for babysitting but accepting the occasional grocery run or yard work in trade. "Oh, Jake, honey," she mumbled, sitting up and smoothing her silver hair. "What time is it?" "Almost 4. Sorry, I'm late. Friday nights always run long." Patricia waved off his apology and gathered her knitting bag and crossword puzzle book. Emma was an angel. Went to bed at 8:30 without any fuss. She did ask when you'd be home, though. 3 times. Guilt twisted in Jake's stomach, the familiar companion of single parenthood. "I'll make it up to her tomorrow. Maybe we'll go to Centennial Park if the weather clears up. She'd like that." Patricia patted his arm as she shuffled toward the door. "You look troubled, dear. Something happened tonight?" Jake opened his mouth to deflect, to offer some generic reassurance, but found himself pulling out Richard Coleman's business card instead. "I had an unusual passenger. He asked me to play guitar for him. Turns out he runs one of the biggest country music labels in Nashville." Patricia's eyebrows rose. And he wants me to call him Monday morning." Said he wants to talk about my music. A smile spread across Patricia's weathered face. Jake, that's wonderful. That's exactly the kind of opportunity Lisa always said would come if you kept... I don't know if I'm going to call, Jake interrupted, more sharply than he intended. He softened his tone. I'm sorry, Mrs. K. I'm just tired. It's complicated. Patricia studied him with the knowing gaze of someone who had lived through enough disappointment and loss to recognize fear when she saw it. What you mean is you're scared. And that's all right. But don't confuse fear with wisdom, honey. Sometimes they look an awful lot alike. She left before Jake could respond, her words hanging in the air like smoke. He locked the door behind her and stood in his living room, surrounded by the evidence of his life. Emma's colorful drawings taped to the walls, Lisa's photographs on the mantel, a stack of unpaid bills on the coffee table, his guitar case leaning against the worn couch. Jake walked quietly down the narrow hallway to Emma's room and eased open the door. His daughter was curled up beneath her faded purple comforter, her dark hair splayed across the pillow in wild tangles. She clutched Lisa's cardigan, a soft gray thing that had long since lost its original shape and scent, but remained Emma's most prized possession. In the glow of her nightlight, a plastic moon that rotated slowly, projecting stars across the ceiling, she looked impossibly small and vulnerable. This was his reason, his purpose. Everything he did, every decision he made, revolved around keeping this little girl safe, fed, clothed, and loved. The music industry was unpredictable, demanding, often cruel. How could he risk their stability for something as uncertain as a career that had already rejected him once? But even as these rational thoughts formed, another voice whispered from somewhere deeper. What kind of life are you modeling for her? Playing it safe? Letting fear win? Is that what Lisa would have wanted? Jake closed Emma's door and retreated to his own bedroom. He didn't bother changing out of his clothes, just collapsed onto the bed and stared at the ceiling. Richard Coleman's business card still in his hand. Sleep finally claimed him sometime after 5 a.m., pulling him into restless dreams of stages and spotlights, and Lisa standing in the wings, smiling and mouthing words he couldn't quite hear. Saturday morning arrived with Emma bouncing on Jake's bed at 8:30, her energy a stark contrast to his exhaustion. Daddy! Daddy! Wake up! You promised we'd have pancakes. Jake groaned and pulled her into a hug, breathing in the apple-scented shampoo from last night's bath. Did I promise that? Every Saturday, Emma declared matter-of-factly. It's tradition. She wasn't wrong. Saturday pancakes had been Lisa's creation. Elaborate productions with chocolate chips arranged into smiley faces, or blueberries forming the letters of Emma's name. Jake's versions were significantly less artistic, but he maintained the ritual with religious devotion. They shuffled to the kitchen together, Emma chattering about the book Mrs. Kowalski had read to her, something about a girl who trained dragons. Jake went through the motions of pancake preparation, measuring flour and cracking eggs, while his mind remained fixated on Monday morning and the phone call he hadn't decided whether to make. Daddy, you're not listening, Emma complained, tugging on his t-shirt. I'm sorry, sweetheart. What did you say? I said Mrs. Patterson wants to have a meeting with you on Tuesday about my reading scores. Emma's face fell slightly. Am I in trouble? Jake knelt down to her eye level, pancake batter forgotten. No, baby. You're not in trouble. Mrs. Patterson just wants to talk about how we can help you with reading. That's all. Tyler Johnson says I read like a baby, Emma mumbled, her eyes fixed on the floor. Anger flashed hot in Jake's chest. Tyler Johnson doesn't know what he's talking about. You're doing great, and you're getting better every day, okay? Emma nodded, but the confidence had drained from her face. Jake pulled her close, feeling the weight of all the things he couldn't fix. The budget that didn't allow for a private tutor. The time he couldn't spare from driving to volunteer in her classroom. The developmental delays that Mrs. Patterson had gently suggested might require testing he couldn't afford. As he poured batter onto the griddle, watching it sizzle and bubble, Jake felt the walls of his life pressing in. Every path seemed blocked by financial limitations or time constraints or the simple exhaustion of doing everything alone. And now, inexplicably, impossibly, a door had opened. One that might lead to opportunity or disaster, he couldn't tell which. They ate pancakes in companionable silence, Emma's mood improving with each chocolate chip smile. Afterward, true to his promise, Jake loaded her into the car and drove to Centennial Park. The weather had cleared overnight, leaving Nashville washed clean and gleaming beneath a crystalline autumn sky. The park was crowded with families enjoying the unseasonably warm Saturday. Emma ran toward the playground, her earlier sadness forgotten in the joy of swings and slides. Jake settled onto a bench, watching her play while his hand unconsciously drifted to his shirt pocket, where Richard Coleman's card had taken up permanent residence. Jake? Jake Harrison? He looked up to find a man in his early 40s approaching, dressed in expensive running gear that marked him as one of the recently arrived tech workers colonizing East Nashville. It took Jake a moment to place the face. Then recognition clicked. Daniel Brooks. They had played the same songwriter circles a decade ago. Two hungry artists chasing the same impossible dream. "Danny Brooks," Jake said, standing to shake hands. "It's been what, 7 years? At least." Daniel's smile was genuine but tinged with the awkwardness of old friends whose lives had diverged dramatically. "I heard about Lisa. Man, I'm so sorry. She was special. Thanks." Jake deflected with practiced efficiency. "What have you been up to?" Daniel's expression brightened. "I got lucky. Had a song cut by Keith Patterson 3 years ago that went to number 3 on the charts. Been writing full-time since then. Just signed a renewal with Big Ladder Music. It's been a good run." The words landed like small defeats, highlighting everything Jake had given up. "That's great, Danny. Really, I'm happy for you. What about you? Still writing?" Daniel asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Nah, I drive for Uber now. Got to keep the lights on." Jake gestured toward Emma, who was attempting to cross the monkey bars. Priorities changed. Daniel followed his gaze and nodded with the vague understanding of someone without children. "I get it. Family first. But man, you had real talent. Some of those songs you played at the Bluebird, I still think about them, especially that one about your grandfather's farm. Midwest Ground or something?" "Broken Ground," Jake corrected quietly. That song had been his best, the one that almost got recorded by a major artist before the deal fell through at the last minute. Right, Broken Ground. That was a hit waiting to happen. Daniel pulled out his phone, checking a notification. "Look, I've got to run, literally. Training for a half marathon. But hey, if you ever want to write again, hit me up. I've got studio time booked every week. We could co-write something." He offered his number, which Jake dutifully entered into his phone, knowing he would never use it. They said their goodbyes, and Daniel jogged off toward the walking trail, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts and the phantom echo of the life he might have lived. That evening, after Emma went to bed, Jake finally allowed himself to research Richard Coleman. He opened his laptop, a 5-year-old Dell that wheezed like an asthmatic, and typed the name into Google. The results were extensive. Richard Coleman had founded Coleman Records 23 years ago with money from a successful tech startup he had sold in his 30s. Unlike most label executives who chased trends and radio formulas, Richard had built his company on a simple philosophy: find authentic voices telling honest stories and let the music speak for itself. The label's roster read like a who's who of traditional country music's revival. Artists who played real instruments, wrote their own songs, and sang about actual human experiences rather than manufactured party anthems. Coleman Records wasn't the biggest label in Nashville, but it was widely respected as one of the most artist-friendly and musically credible. Jake clicked through interviews with Richard, absorbing his philosophy. In one video from a music industry conference, Richard spoke passionately about the difference between entertainment and art. "Entertainment gives people what they already know they want," he said, his eyes intense behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Art gives them something they didn't know they needed. My job is to find the artists brave enough to offer truth, even when truth doesn't have a catchy hook." The words resonated uncomfortably in Jake's chest. He closed the laptop and sat in darkness, listening to the house settle around him, the refrigerator's hum, the distant bark of a neighborhood dog, the whisper of wind through the oak tree outside his window. His phone showed 10:47 p.m. In roughly 34 hours, it would be 9 a.m. Monday. Decision time. Jake walked to the hallway closet and pulled out the old cardboard box he kept on the top shelf, the one he hadn't opened in 3 years. Inside were the artifacts of his musical past: demo CDs with handwritten labels, photographs from gigs at long-closed venues, a notebook filled with song lyrics in his younger, more optimistic handwriting, and a small velvet box containing the silver wedding band Lisa had slipped onto his finger 9 years ago. He opened the notebook and read through songs he had forgotten he'd written. They were good, maybe better than he remembered. Raw and honest and specific, the kind of songs Richard Coleman claimed to be searching for. At the bottom of the box, he found a photograph that made his breath catch. It showed him on stage at the Bluebird cafe, guitar in hand, mid-song, his face transformed by the joy of performance. Lisa had taken the picture from the audience. He could almost hear her voice. "That's when you're most yourself, when you're playing. Don't ever lose that." But he had lost it, buried it under grief and responsibility and the daily grind of survival. The question was, could he excavate it? And more importantly, should he? Jake returned the box to the closet and checked on Emma one more time before bed. She was sprawled across her mattress in the boneless way of sleeping children, Lisa's cardigan fallen to the floor. He picked it up and tucked it back beside her, then kissed her forehead. "Your mama would know what to do," he whispered. "I wish I did." Sunday passed in a blur of laundry, grocery shopping, and Emma's soccer practice, a recreation league where the 8-year-old spent more time chasing butterflies than the ball. Jake watched from the sidelines, surrounded by other parents who seemed to have their lives figured out in ways he couldn't imagine. That night, he worked a short Uber shift, 6 hours that netted him $143 after expenses. Every ride felt mechanical, his mind already in tomorrow morning, imagining the phone call he still hadn't decided to make. He arrived home at midnight to find Mrs. Kowalski asleep on his couch again, and Emma sleeping peacefully. After thanking his neighbor and locking up, Jake stood in his kitchen, staring at Richard Coleman's business card propped against the salt shaker on the table. The smart choice was obvious. Don't call, stay the course. Keep driving, keep the stability, keep Emma's life predictable and secure. The music industry had chewed up and spit out better artists than him. Why would this time be any different? But then he thought about Emma asking him once. She was 6 years old, and they were driving past the Grand Ole Opry. "Daddy, did you used to be a singer?" The way her eyes had lit up when he said yes. The pride in her voice when she told her first-grade class that her dad played guitar. the way she sometimes asked him to play for her, and how alive he felt during those rare moments when he said yes, instead of making excuses. What kind of life was he modeling? What kind of man did he want his daughter to see when she looked at him? Someone who took chances, or someone who let fear make all his decisions? Jake picked up the business card and read it for perhaps the 100th time. 9 a.m. Richard Coleman's direct line. One phone call. That's all it would be. A conversation. It didn't commit him to anything. He could hear what Richard had to say and make an informed decision instead of one rooted purely in fear. Before he could second-guess himself further, Jake set his phone alarm for 8:30 a.m. and went to bed, knowing that Monday morning would bring either a new beginning or confirmation that his dream was truly dead. Either way, he would finally know. Jake's alarm pierced the Monday morning silence at 8:30. He silenced it immediately and lay still, staring at the ceiling while his heart hammered against his ribs. In 30 minutes, he would either make the call or let the opportunity pass. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like a physical force. Emma appeared in his doorway, already dressed in her school uniform, navy blue polo shirt and khaki pants that Mrs. Kowalski had helped her pick out last night. "Daddy, we're going to be late. Mrs. K says breakfast is ready." "I'll be right there, sweetheart." He forced himself out of bed and through the morning routine on autopilot, brushing teeth, pulling on jeans and a clean flannel shirt, joining Emma and Mrs. Kowalski in the kitchen where oatmeal and orange juice waited. His neighbors studied him with knowing eyes but mercifully said nothing about the tension radiating from him in waves. At 8:50, Jake walked Emma out to the car to drive her to Antioch Elementary. She chattered about a science project involving volcanoes while he navigated through morning traffic, his mind counting down the minutes. 8:53, 8:55, 8:57. He pulled into the school drop-off line at 8:59. Emma gathered her backpack and lunchbox, then paused before opening the door. "You're being weird today, Daddy." Jake managed a smile. "Just thinking about grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Learn something good today, okay?" "Okay." She leaned over to hug him, a gesture she was starting to grow out of but still occasionally offered. "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Emma Bear." She hopped out and joined the stream of children flowing toward the school entrance. Jake watched until she disappeared through the doors, then checked his phone. 9 a.m. exactly. His hand trembled slightly as he pulled up Richard Coleman's contact information. The direct line, not an assistant. One ring would connect him to a conversation that could change everything or nothing. He thought about Daniel Brooks jogging through Centennial Park, successful and established. He thought about Broken Ground and all the songs that had never found their audience. He thought about Lisa's voice. "That's when you're most yourself." Jake pressed the call button before fear could stop him. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, Richard Coleman's familiar voice answered, "This is Richard." "Mr. Coleman? This is Jake Harrison, the Uber driver from Friday night. You asked me to call this morning." "Jake!" Richard's voice warmed immediately. "I'm glad you called. I wasn't entirely sure you would. How are you?" "Nervous," Jake admitted honestly, "and confused about why someone like you would be interested in someone like me." Richard chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "Someone like you is exactly who I'm interested in. Can you come to my office today? This afternoon, maybe? I'd like to have a proper conversation." Jake's mind raced through his schedule. He had planned to drive the lunch rush, then pick up Emma at 3:15. "I could do 2 p.m. I'd need to leave by 3 to get my daughter from school." 2 o'clock works perfectly. "Do you know where Coleman Records is located?" "I can find it." Jake paused, then forced himself to ask the question burning in his mind. "Mr. Coleman, what exactly is this about? I appreciate Friday night, but I'm not sure what you're expecting from me." "I'm expecting a conversation, Jake. Nothing more, nothing less. Come with an open mind, and we'll see where it leads." Sound fair? It didn't, really. Jake felt like he was walking blindfolded toward a cliff edge, but he heard himself agree anyway. They exchanged a few more logistical details, and then the call ended, leaving Jake sitting in the elementary school parking lot, with his future suddenly, terrifyingly uncertain. Coleman Records occupied a renovated Victorian house in the Edge Hill neighborhood. Its exterior painted a dignified gray with black shutters. A discreet bronze plaque by the door identified it as the label's headquarters. Jake arrived 15 minutes early and spent that time sitting in his car, practicing deep breathing exercises that did nothing to calm his racing heart. At precisely 2 p.m., he walked through the front door into a reception area that felt more like someone's elegant living room than a corporate office. Vintage concert posters lined the walls: Johnny Cash, Loretta Lynn, Waylon Jennings, alongside framed gold and platinum records from Coleman Records artists. A young receptionist with bright red hair and multiple ear piercings looked up from her computer. "You must be Jake Harrison. Mr. Coleman is expecting you. Second floor, last door on the right." Jake climbed the creaking wooden stairs, each step feeling momentous. The second-floor hallway was lined with more photographs. Richard Coleman shaking hands with famous artists, cutting ribbons at award shows, accepting industry honors. This was a man who operated at the highest levels of Nashville's music ecosystem. And Jake was about to walk into his office wearing 5-year-old jeans and carrying the permanent exhaustion of a single parent working night shifts. He knocked on the last door on the right. "Come in," Richard's voice called. The office was spacious but unpretentious, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive oak desk covered in manuscripts and CDs, and windows overlooking a small garden. Richard stood up from behind his desk, dressed more casually than Friday night in jeans and a button-down shirt, and came around to shake Jake's hand warmly. "Jake, thank you for coming. Please, sit." He gestured to a comfortable leather chair across from his desk, then settled into his own chair. "Can I get you coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thanks." Jake sat rigidly, his hands clasped in his lap. Richard leaned back and studied him with the same intense but kind gaze from Friday night. "You look terrified. Should I be insulted?" "I'm sorry. I don't understand what I'm doing here. I sang you one song, an unpolished, unrehearsed song in the back of my car. That's not exactly an audition." "You're right," Richard agreed. "It wasn't an audition. Auditions are performances designed to impress. What you gave me was something much rarer. The truth. An unguarded moment of genuine artistry." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "Jake, I've been in this business for 23 years. I've heard thousands of demo tapes, attended hundreds of showcases, sat through countless pitch meetings. Most of what I hear is technically proficient, but emotionally hollow. Manufactured authenticity. People trying to sound country without actually living country." He paused, making sure Jake was following. "What you played for me, Emma's Eyes, that wasn't trying to be anything. It simply was. That's what I've been searching for. A voice that doesn't know how to be anything other than honest." Jake's throat felt tight. "That's just one song. I haven't written anything new in 3 years. I barely play anymore. And I have no illusions about what the music industry requires. Time, energy, risk, financial instability. I can't offer any of that. I have a daughter depending on me. I know. You've mentioned Emma several times, and I understand that she's your priority. She should be. Richard opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Here's what I'm proposing. Nothing crazy, nothing that requires you to quit your day job or upend your life. I want to offer you studio time, 3 full days next month. We'll record 4 or 5 songs, professional musicians, top-tier production, everything on my dime. No financial risk to you whatsoever. Jake blinked, processing this. Why would you do that? Because I believe in your voice, and I want to see what you can do in a proper recording environment. If the sessions go well and we create something special, we'll talk about next steps. If it doesn't work out, you walk away having had a professional recording experience, and I'll have satisfied my curiosity. No contract, no obligations beyond those 3 days. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. Jake had been around the music industry long enough to know that nothing was truly free. What's the catch? Richard smiled. The catch is that I need new material. If we're going to record, you need to write 3 or 4 more songs at the same level as Emma's Eyes. That's your homework between now and the session dates. Can you do that? Could he? Jake had no idea. The song he'd played Friday night had taken 2 years to fully form, emerging from grief at a pace he couldn't control or predict. The idea of summoning that kind of emotional honesty on command seemed impossible. But then again, maybe it wasn't. Maybe the reason he hadn't written was because he'd stopped allowing himself to feel deeply, to sit with his pain and his hope and his complicated love for a life that both fulfilled and exhausted him. Maybe the songs were there, waiting for permission to exist. I can try, Jake said quietly. That's all I'm asking. Richard slid a document across the desk. This is a simple agreement outlining what I just described. Studio time scheduled for November 15th through 17th. No financial obligation on your end. You retain all rights to your songs unless we mutually agree to pursue a recording contract after hearing the finished tracks. Take it home, read it. Have a lawyer look at it if you want. No pressure. Jake picked up the document, scanning the legal language that mostly matched what Richard had explained. His hands were still trembling. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why me? You could have any songwriter in Nashville. Why invest time and money in a 34-year-old Uber driver who gave up on music years ago? Richard was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. 15 years ago, I passed on signing an artist named Michael Brennan. He played me 3 songs in an office much like this one. They were good, technically solid, nice melodies, competent lyrics, but they didn't move me. So I said no. Michael signed with another label and went on to have 4 #1 hits and sell millions of records. He refocused on Jake. I was wrong about Michael. I mistook polish for emptiness. After that, I learned to trust my gut when something genuinely moves me, regardless of how it's packaged. Friday night, sitting in your car, listening to you sing about your daughter and your late wife, I felt something I haven't felt in years. Call it instinct, call it a hunch. But I've learned not to ignore that feeling. Jake nodded slowly, the weight of Richard's faith both flattering and terrifying. I need to think about this and talk to some people. Absolutely. Take your time. But Jake, Richard stood, signaling the meeting's end. Don't think too much. Sometimes the head talks us out of what the heart knows is right. They shook hands again, and Jake left the office in a daze, walking down the creaking stairs and out into the afternoon sunshine. He sat in his car for several minutes, the unsigned agreement on the passenger seat, Richard Coleman's words echoing in his mind. Then he drove to Antioch Elementary, arriving in the pickup line just as the school day ended. Emma emerged with her friend Chloe Yang, both girls laughing about something only 8-year-olds found hilarious. When Emma spotted Jake's car, her face lit up. the same expression Lisa used to have when he'd surprise her with flowers or a spontaneous date night. "How was your day?" Jake asked as Emma climbed into the back seat. "Good. We started our volcano projects. I'm partners with Chloe. We're going to make ours purple." She buckled her seatbelt. "How was your day?" Jake caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. Lisa's eyes, dark and deep and full of trust. "It was interesting, Emma Bear. Really interesting." That evening, after dinner and homework and Emma's bath, Jake sat at their small kitchen table with the agreement from Coleman Records and his old songwriting notebook. Mrs. Kowalski had agreed to stay with Emma while Jake took a drive, something he needed to do to think clearly. He drove to Mount Olivet Cemetery, where Lisa was buried beneath a simple granite headstone that read, "Lisa Marie Harrison, beloved wife and mother, her light lives on." Jake visited maybe once a month, usually when he felt particularly lost or overwhelmed. He wasn't sure he believed Lisa could actually hear him, but talking to her gravestone created a space where he could be honest with himself. He sat cross-legged on the grass beside her grave as dusk settled over Nashville, the city's lights beginning to twinkle in the distance. "I don't know what to do," he told her. "Everything logical says I should walk away. We're okay right now, barely, but okay. Why risk that for something that probably won't work out?" The cemetery was silent except for wind rustling through the oak trees. "But I keep thinking about what you used to say, about playing it safe being its own kind of risk, about how we only get one life, and fear is a terrible compass." Jake's voice cracked slightly. "I'm so scared, Lisa. Scared of failing, scared of disrupting Emma's stability, scared of hoping for something that might not happen. But I'm also starting to realize I'm scared of living the rest of my life wondering, what if?" A car passed on the distant road, its headlights sweeping across the headstones. "If you were here, you'd tell me to go for it. You'd say Emma needs to see me take chances, pursue dreams, believe in myself. You'd say I can't protect her from disappointment by never trying anything. You'd probably also point out that I'm overthinking this, which is absolutely true." Jake pulled out his phone and opened the voice memo app. Without allowing himself to second-guess, he started humming a melody that had been floating in his head since this morning. Something in a minor key, melancholic but hopeful. Then words started coming. "I talk to ghosts in graveyards, asking what they'd do, knowing damn well if she could answer, she'd say it's up to you. Love ain't about playing safe or protecting from the fall. It's about showing up, diving in, risking it all." He recorded for 20 minutes, capturing fragments of lyrics and musical ideas, raw and unfinished, but alive. When he finally stopped, he had the skeleton of a second song. Not complete, but enough to know it was there, waiting to be excavated. Jake placed his hand on Lisa's headstone. "I'm going to try. For Emma. For you. For me. And if it doesn't work out, at least I'll know I was brave enough to try." He drove home with the windows down, letting cool autumn air wash over him, feeling simultaneously terrified and more alive than he had in years. Mrs. Kowalski was waiting on the porch when he pulled into the driveway. "You look different," she observed as he approached. "I feel different." Jake smiled, a genuine expression that felt foreign on his face. "I think I might be about to do something really stupid or really wonderful. Not sure which yet." Patricia patted his cheek with her weathered hand. "Often the same thing, honey. Often the same thing." That night, after Emma fell asleep, Jake signed Richard Coleman's agreement, scanned it with his phone, and emailed it back. Then he opened his songwriting notebook to a fresh page and wrote at the top, "Songs for Coleman Records." Tadit. By 2 a.m., he had drafted 3 more songs, rough, incomplete, but with kernels of something real. He fell asleep at the kitchen table, his hand cramping from hours of scribbling, his mind already spinning lyrics and melodies. The next morning, Jake woke to Emma shaking his shoulder. "Daddy, you fell asleep at the table again, and you're smiling. Are you okay?" Jake stretched, his back aching from the awkward position. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm actually better than okay. Come here." He pulled her into a hug. "How would you feel if Daddy did some music recording next month? Just for a few days. It wouldn't change anything big, but I wanted you to know." Emma's eyes widened. "Like real recording? In a studio?" "Yeah, like real recording." "That's so cool." She hugged him tighter. "Will I get to hear the songs?" "You'll be the first one to hear them. I promise." And in that moment, with his daughter's arms wrapped around him and the morning light streaming through their kitchen window, Jake Harrison felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 long years. Hope for a future that looked different from his past. The weeks between signing the agreement and the recording sessions passed in a blur of frantic creativity and logistical juggling. Jake wrote during every spare moment. Late nights after Emma went to bed, early mornings before his Uber shifts, voice memos recorded during breaks between rides. The songs emerged slowly, painfully, like pulling splinters from beneath skin. Each one excavated a different piece of himself he'd kept buried. Grief, fatherhood, financial anxiety, hope, loneliness, resilience. By November 10th, he had 5 complete songs. Not perfect, but real. He recorded rough demos on his phone and emailed them to Richard, who responded within hours. "These are exactly what I was hoping for. See you Monday at Sound Kitchen Studios, 9 a.m. The Sunday before the sessions, Jake couldn't eat. Emma noticed his nervousness over breakfast and asked if he was sick. "Just excited, sweetheart. First day of recording tomorrow." "Are you going to be famous?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. Jake laughed despite his anxiety. "No, baby. This is just a chance to record some songs professionally. It probably won't lead to anything big, but it'll be a really cool experience." Mrs. Kowalski had agreed to handle Emma's morning routine and school drop-off for the 3 recording days. On Monday morning at 8:30, Jake stood in front of his bathroom mirror in his best, and only, pair of dark jeans and a clean button-down shirt, barely recognizing the nervous, hopeful man staring back at him. Sound Kitchen Studios was located in an industrial building in South Nashville, its exterior offering no hint of the creative magic that happened within. Jake arrived 15 minutes early and sat in his car, trying to calm his breathing. At 8:55, he forced himself inside. The receptionist directed him to Studio B, where he found Richard Coleman speaking with 3 musicians setting up equipment. The studio was beautiful. Wood-paneled walls, vintage recording gear alongside modern digital equipment, natural light filtering through frosted glass. A drum kit sat in one corner, amplifiers in another, microphones positioned throughout the space, like attentive listeners. "Jake, perfect timing." Richard came over and clasped his shoulder. "Let me introduce you to the band. This is Tommy Vance on guitar, Jennifer Chen on fiddle, and David Miller on drums. They're 3 of the best session musicians in Nashville." The musicians greeted Jake with friendly professionalism, and for the next hour, they worked through arrangements for the first song, Emma's Eyes, the one Jake had played for Richard that rainy night. Tommy suggested a finger-picking pattern that complemented Jake's vocal melody. Jennifer added subtle fiddle touches that enhanced the emotional weight without overwhelming it. David kept the rhythm sparse and intimate, just brushes on the snare and light touches on the kick drum. By 11 a.m., they were ready to record the first take. Jake sat on a stool in the center of the room, headphones on, his Yamaha guitar in his arms. Though Richard had offered studio instruments, Jake insisted on using his own. The engineer, a quiet man named Paul Martinez, counted them in. Jake's voice cracked on the first verse. They stopped and started over. The second take was better, but he rushed the chorus. On the third attempt, something clicked. Jake closed his eyes and let the song transport him back to those first desperate months after Lisa's death, when Emma was the only reason he got out of bed each morning. His voice steadied, found its emotional center, and carried the lyrics with raw honesty. When the final chord faded, the studio was silent. Jake opened his eyes to find Richard standing in the control room, his hand over his mouth, clearly moved. Through the talkback speaker, Paul's voice said quietly, "That was the one." They recorded 2 more songs that first day. Broken Ground, his song about his grandfather's failed farm in rural Indiana, and a new composition called Third Shift Blues, about the invisible working people who kept cities running while everyone else slept. By 6 p.m., Jake was emotionally exhausted but exhilarated. He drove straight to Mrs. Kowalski's house to pick up Emma, who bombarded him with questions about microphones and famous people. "Did you see anyone famous, Daddy?" "Just some really talented musicians, sweetheart. No big celebrities." That would change on day 2. Tuesday morning, Jake arrived at the studio to find an unfamiliar Mercedes SUV parked in the lot. When he entered Studio B, his breath caught. Standing next to Richard Coleman, holding a cup of coffee and laughing at something the producer had said, was Alan Jackson, one of the most iconic voices in country music history, a living legend whose songs Jake had grown up with, and whose career had influenced an entire generation of traditional country artists. Jake froze in the doorway, suddenly feeling like an imposter. Richard noticed him and waved him over. "Jake, come meet someone." "Alan, this is Jake Harrison, the artist I was telling you about." Alan Jackson extended his hand, his famous smile warm and genuine. "Nice to meet you, Jake. Richard played me your rough demos last week. Emma's Eyes just about broke my heart. That's a special song." Jake shook his hand, his mind struggling to process the surreal moment. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson. That means more than I can say. I've been listening to your music since I was a kid. Call me Alan. And I'm not here to get in your way. Richard asked if I'd stop by and maybe add some harmony vocals to one of your tracks. If you're open to it, but only if you're comfortable with that." Comfortable? Jake was the opposite of comfortable. He was terrified and starstruck and completely overwhelmed. But he managed to nod. "I'd be honored." They spent the morning recording Graveyard Conversations, the song Jake had started writing at Lisa's grave. Alan listened intently to the rough arrangement, then quietly suggested a harmony line for the chorus that elevated the entire song. When they recorded together, Jake's voice on the lead, Alan's tenor weaving through the harmony, the result was breathtaking. During a break, Alan pulled Jake aside in the studio lounge. "Can I give you some unsolicited advice?" "Please," Jake said. "I've been doing this for 35 years, and I've seen a lot of talented people come and go. The ones who make it aren't always the most gifted singers or the best guitar players. They're the ones who stay true to their own voice and their own story, even when the industry tries to mold them into something else." Alan paused, studying Jake. "Richard told me about your daughter and your wife, about how you gave up music to be a father. That's not giving up. That's choosing what matters. And that choice, that sacrifice, that's what makes your songs real. Don't ever be ashamed of your path. It's what gives you something to say." Jake's throat tightened. "I'm scared this won't lead anywhere, that I'm getting my hopes up for nothing." "Maybe it won't lead where you think," Alan acknowledged. "But you're making art that means something. You're creating songs that'll outlive you, that your daughter will have forever. That's not nothing. That's everything." They recorded 3 more songs that day, including a duet with Alan on a track called Two Generations, a song Jake had written about his father's struggles with alcoholism and the cycle he was determined not to repeat with Emma. Alan's involvement transformed it into something transcendent. When Tuesday's session ended, Alan shook Jake's hand one final time. "Keep writing truth, Jake. Nashville needs more of it." After Alan left, Richard played back the day's recordings. Hearing his voice alongside one of his childhood heroes was surreal and humbling. But more than that, hearing the songs fully produced, with Jennifer's fiddle, Tommy's guitar work, David's thoughtful drumming, Jake finally understood what he'd created. These weren't just personal journal entries set to music. They were stories that could connect with anyone who'd experienced loss, or struggled to provide for their family, or wondered if they were enough. Wednesday, the final day, focused on overdubs and mixing. Jake recorded additional vocal harmonies and guitar parts, while Paul worked his technical magic, balancing all the elements into cohesive productions. By late afternoon, they had 5 finished songs that sounded radio-ready. Richard gathered everyone in the control room for a playback of the complete session. As the songs played in sequence, Jake watched the faces of the musicians and engineers, professionals who'd worked on countless records, and saw genuine emotional responses. Jennifer wiped her eyes during Emma's Eyes. Tommy nodded along to Third Shift Blues with a knowing smile. Even Paul, who'd maintained professional distance throughout, said quietly, "This is special work, man." When the last song faded, Richard turned to Jake. "Well, what do you think?" Jake struggled to find words adequate to the moment. "I think we made something I'm proud of. Something Lisa would have loved. Something Emma can listen to someday and understand who her dad was. I think we made something Nashville needs to hear," Richard corrected gently. "The question now is, what do you want to do with it?" They moved to Richard's temporary office in the studio complex, a small room with a couch, a desk, and windows overlooking the parking lot. Richard poured them both coffee and sat across from Jake. "Here's where we stand," Richard began. "We have 5 professionally recorded songs that I believe are commercially viable while maintaining complete artistic integrity. I want to release them as an EP under Coleman Records. I'm offering you a recording contract, nothing predatory, very artist-friendly terms. You'd retain ownership of your songs, creative control over future recordings, and a fair royalty split. We'd promote the EP to country radio, pitch to streaming playlists, and see what happens." Jake's heart raced. "What would that mean for my life? For Emma? That depends on how the EP performs. Best case scenario, it connects with an audience. You start getting booking requests for shows, radio interviews, maybe some festival appearances. You'd need to balance that with parenting, which I know is your priority. Worst case, it doesn't gain traction, but you have 5 great songs professionally recorded that you can be proud of forever. And financially?" Richard was candid. "The advance I'm offering is modest, $15,000. Enough to give you some breathing room, but not enough to quit your day job. If the EP sells, you'd earn royalties. If it doesn't, you keep the advance regardless. No debt, no obligation beyond this initial 5-song release unless we both agree to move forward. $15,000. Jake did quick mental math. That would cover Emma's reading tutoring, the past due bills, maybe even a small savings cushion. It wouldn't change their lives, but it would ease the constant financial pressure that kept him awake at night. "I need to think about it," Jake said, "and talk to Emma. She needs to understand what this might mean." "Of course, take a few days." "But Jake," Richard leaned forward, his expression earnest, "I don't make offers lightly. I believe in these songs and in your voice. I think you have a real shot at connecting with people. Don't let fear decide for you." Jake drove home through rush hour traffic, his mind spinning. He picked up Emma from Mrs. Kowalski's house and took her to their favorite diner, Sunrise Cafe, where he'd proposed to Lisa a lifetime ago. Over burgers and milkshakes, he tried to explain the situation in 8-year-old terms. "So, someone wants to put your songs on the radio?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. "Maybe. They want to try, but it would mean some changes. I might have to do some traveling for performances. You'd stay with Mrs. K more often, and there's no guarantee it'll work out." Emma was quiet for a moment, swirling her straw in her chocolate shake. "Would you be happy?" The question pierced Jake's heart. "What do you mean?" "Mrs. Patterson says we should do things that make us happy, as long as we're not hurting anyone. Would making music make you happy?" "Titi." Jake thought about the past 3 days in the studio. The exhaustion, the vulnerability, the fear, but also the profound satisfaction of creating something meaningful. "Yeah, sweetheart. It would make me really happy." "Then you should do it." Emma said it with the simple clarity of childhood, as if the decision were obvious. "Mama would want you to be happy, and I want you to be happy too." Jake reached across the table and took her small hand. "You know what makes me happiest? Being your dad. That's never going to change, no matter what happens with the music." "I know, Daddy." Emma smiled, Lisa's smile, full of light. "But you can be my dad and a singer. You don't have to choose." Out of the mouths of babes, Jake thought. Why had he been framing this as an either-or proposition, when maybe, just maybe, it could be both? That night, after Emma went to sleep, Jake sat at his kitchen table with Richard Coleman's contract. He read through every clause, every stipulation, looking for hidden traps or unfair terms. But Richard had been honest. The contract was straightforward and generous, clearly designed by someone who valued artists rather than exploiting them. Jake thought about Alan Jackson's words. "You're making art that means something. You're creating songs that'll outlive you, that your daughter will have forever." He thought about Lisa and the dreams they'd shared before life got complicated. He thought about Emma's simple wisdom. "You can be my dad and a singer. You don't have to choose." At midnight, Jake signed the contract. Then he emailed it to Richard with a short message. "Let's do this. For Emma, for Lisa, for everyone who needs to hear that it's okay to be broken and still keep going." Richard replied within minutes. "Welcome to Coleman Records. Let's make history together." 3 months later, Jake stood backstage at the Station Inn, one of Nashville's most legendary honky-tonks, preparing for his first public performance in 8 years. His hands trembled as he tuned his Yamaha guitar, the familiar nervous energy of pre-show anxiety coursing through him. Through the curtain, he could hear the crowd, maybe 100 people. Modest by industry standards, but terrifying to someone who'd spent the last several years invisible behind a steering wheel. The EP, titled Third Shift, had been released 6 weeks ago. Richard had worked his industry connections to secure playlist placements on Spotify and Apple Music, college radio airplay, and features in several music blogs. The response had been modest but genuine. Not viral fame, but a slowly building audience of listeners who connected with Jake's honest storytelling and unpolished authenticity. Emma's Eyes had gained particular traction, shared on social media by parents who recognized themselves in Jake's lyrics about single parenthood and loss. It hadn't charted on Billboard, but it had reached people, which felt more valuable than any commercial success. Emma was in the audience tonight, sitting in the front row with Mrs. Kowalski. Jake had been unsure about bringing her. The Station Inn was a bar, after all, and the show wouldn't end until after her bedtime. But Emma had insisted. and the venue had graciously allowed an exception for the artist's 8-year-old daughter. Richard appeared beside Jake, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "You ready?" "Not even a little bit," Jake admitted. "Good. That means you care." Richard smiled. "Remember what Alan told you. Just be yourself. Tell your stories. That's all anyone wants." The MC's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Station Inn stage, making his debut performance, Jake Harrison." Jake took a deep breath, thought of Lisa, thought of Emma's encouraging smile, and stepped through the curtain into the spotlight. The stage lights were blinding at first, rendering the audience into dark silhouettes. But as his eyes adjusted, Jake found Emma's face in the front row. She was beaming, her hands already raised to clap. That single image steadied him. "Good evening," Jake said into the microphone, his voice stronger than he felt. "My name's Jake Harrison, and until about 4 months ago, I was driving most of you around Nashville in my Uber. Thanks for being here tonight." Laughter rippled through the crowd, breaking the tension. Jake launched into his set with Third Shift Blues, a mid-tempo song that allowed him to ease into performance mode. By the second verse, his muscle memory kicked in. The thousands of hours he'd spent on small stages in his 20s, returning like an old language he'd never fully forgotten. The crowd responded warmly, clapping along to the rhythm, and Jake felt the familiar magic of live performance. The connection between artist and audience, the shared experience of music creating temporary community among strangers. He played through most of the EP, Broken Ground, Graveyard Conversations, and 2 Generations, explaining briefly before each song what had inspired it. The audience listened attentively, offering enthusiastic applause after each track. Then came the moment Jake had been both anticipating and dreading. He adjusted his microphone stand and spoke directly to Emma in the front row. "This next song is about someone very special. My daughter, Emma, is here tonight." He gestured toward her, and the crowd applauded. Emma's face turned pink, but she smiled proudly. Her mama passed away 3 years ago, when Emma was 5, and for a long time, I didn't think I could do this music thing anymore. But Emma reminded me that you don't have to choose between being a parent and following your dreams. You can be both. So this song's for her. It's called Emma's Eyes. The room fell completely silent as Jake began the opening chords. This was the song that had started everything. The one he'd played for Richard Coleman in a rain-soaked car on a random October night. Now, in this legendary venue, surrounded by Nashville's music community and his daughter, Jake sang it with 3 months of additional healing and hope coloring every word. His voice cracked slightly on the bridge. "She's got her mama's way of seeing light where I see rain." But he didn't try to hide it. That crack was part of the truth, part of the story. When he reached the final chorus, he opened his eyes and sang directly to Emma, who was crying quietly, Mrs. Kowalski's arm around her shoulders. The final chord resonated through the room, and for a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then the audience erupted. Not just polite applause, but genuine, sustained ovation. People stood. Someone whistled. Jake saw multiple audience members wiping their eyes. Emma was on her feet, clapping harder than anyone, her face streaked with tears, but radiant with pride. Jake set down his guitar, jumped off the small stage, and wrapped her in a hug. "That was beautiful, Daddy," she whispered into his chest. "Mama would have loved it." "I know, baby. I know." After the show, as Jake packed up his gear, a steady stream of audience members approached to thank him, share their own stories of loss and resilience, and buy physical copies of the EP from the merch table Richard had set up. An older man with calloused hands introduced himself as a truck driver, who'd lost his wife to Alzheimer's. Emma's eyes had helped him process his grief. A young woman explained that she was a single mother of two, and third shift blues made her feel seen in a way no other song had. These weren't industry professionals or music critics. They were regular people who'd found themselves in Jake's songs. Exactly the audience Richard had predicted. As the venue cleared out and Jake helped fold up chairs, Richard approached with his phone. "You need to see this." He showed Jake a Twitter thread that had gone viral during the show. A music journalist named Beth Carpenter had attended the performance and Liv tweeted about it, posting video clips and declaring Jake the most authentic new voice in country music. The tweets had been shared thousands of times, with many comments from people adding Emma's Eyes to their playlists. "This is just the beginning," Richard said. "I've already had 3 booking agents email me tonight asking about Jake's availability for festivals next summer." Jake's stomach flipped. Festivals meant travel, time away from Emma, stepping further into an uncertain future. But looking at his daughter, now asleep with her head on Mrs. Kowalski's shoulder, exhausted but happy, he realized something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't abandoning his responsibilities by pursuing music. He was modeling courage, resilience, and the importance of not letting fear write your story. 6 months after that Station Inn performance, Jake's life had transformed in ways both thrilling and challenging. The EP had sold modestly but steadily, reaching number 18 on the Americana charts. Not blockbuster success, but respectable for an unknown artist on an independent label. Emma's Eyes had been streamed over 2 million times on Spotify and had been covered by several established artists, generating publishing royalties that supplemented Jake's income. He still drove for Uber, but only 3 days a week now, enough to maintain stable income while freeing up time for writing, recording demos, and occasional performances. Richard had advanced him money to hire a part-time assistant who helped manage his growing schedule and social media presence. Mrs. Kowalski continued to be his lifeline, watching Emma during evening shows and providing the stability his daughter needed. Emma thrived. Her reading scores had improved dramatically thanks to the tutoring Jake could now afford. She'd started telling her classmates that her dad was a singer, playing them Emma's Eyes on her iPad with unabashed pride. The parent-teacher conferences were no longer stressful obligations, but opportunities to share how music had revitalized their household. In late spring, Jake received an invitation that nearly stopped his heart. Alan Jackson's team reached out to ask if Jake would open for Alan at a show in Bloomington, Indiana, just 90 miles from the farm where Jake's grandfather had struggled and failed. The same farm immortalized in Broken Ground. The show took place on a warm June evening at the Indiana University Auditorium, a venue that seated nearly 4,000 people, exponentially larger than anywhere Jake had performed. Standing side stage, watching Alan Jackson command the audience with decades of practiced mastery, Jake felt both intimidated and inspired. When his set time arrived, Jake walked onto that massive stage with his Yamaha guitar and a heart full of memories. He could almost feel his grandfather in the audience, the stubborn old farmer who'd taught Jake his first chords on this same battered instrument. "Good evening, Indiana," Jake said into the microphone, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. "I grew up about 90 miles north of here, on a farm that doesn't exist anymore. This first song is about that place, about my grandfather, and about how failure doesn't have to define you. It's called Broken Ground." The audience of 4,000 strangers listened raptly as Jake sang about his family's history, the foreclosure, the shame, the lessons learned from defeat. When the song ended, the applause was thunderous, validating years of doubt and struggle. After his 30-minute set, as Jake exited the stage, Alan Jackson was waiting in the wings. He pulled Jake into a quick hug. You killed it out there, brother. That grandfather of yours would be real proud. Thank you, Alan, for everything. None of this happens without you believing in my songs." Alan shook his head. "I didn't make you talented. I just helped amplify what was already there. Keep writing truth, Jake. The world needs it." Jake watched from side stage as Alan performed his hit-filled set, marveling at the journey that had led him here. From a rain-soaked Uber ride to opening for one of country music's legends, it still felt impossible, like a dream he might wake from at any moment. After the show, backstage in the green room, Jake FaceTimed with Emma and Mrs. Kowalski back in Nashville. Emma was supposed to be in bed, but Mrs. Kowalski had made an exception. "How was it, Daddy?" Emma asked, her face filling the phone screen. "Pretty amazing, sweetheart. I wish you could have been here." Mrs. K and I watched some videos people posted. "You looked like a real star." Jake laughed. "I don't know about that, but I felt like me up there. The best version of me. Mama would be so proud," Emma said softly. "Yeah, baby. I think she would be." After they said goodnight, Jake sat alone in the green room, exhausted but fulfilled in a way he'd forgotten was possible. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Talk to 3 more promoters tonight. They want Jake Harrison at their festivals. This is really happening. This is really happening." The words resonated as Jake thought about the past year, the impossible series of events that had brought him from anonymous Uber driver to emerging artist with a growing fan base and professional opportunities. It hadn't been a straight line or a fairy tale. There were still bills to pay, parenting challenges to navigate, and the ever-present uncertainty of an industry that could be generous one moment and cruel the next. But he was doing it. He was being a father and a musician, honoring Lisa's memory and creating new memories, playing it safe while also taking risks. The contradictions didn't cancel each other out. They coexisted, making his life messy and complicated and real. 1 year after that fateful Uber ride, Jake was invited to perform at the Bluebird Cafe, the legendary Nashville venue where countless careers had been launched, where he himself had played in his 20s, dreaming of exactly this kind of second chance. It was a Monday night writers' round featuring 4 songwriters taking turns playing their original material. Jake shared the small stage with 3 established Nashville tunesmiths, all of whom welcomed him warmly despite his newcomer status. Emma sat at a front table with Mrs. Kowalski, Richard Coleman, and Jake's younger brother Daniel Harrison, who'd driven up from Atlanta specifically for the show. The room was packed with industry professionals, tourists, and devoted music fans, all observing the Bluebird's famous rules of absolute silence during performances. When Jake's turn came in the rotation, he played a new song he'd written just last week, called "The Long Way Home." It was about the circuitous path that had led him back to music, the detours and delays, the grief and responsibility, the unexpected passenger who'd changed everything. One verse referenced that October night directly. "Sometimes angels ride in Ubers, asking questions you're afraid to answer. Sometimes destiny looks like coincidence, wrapped in rain and taking chances." The audience listened with the reverent attention the Bluebird was known for, and when Jake finished, the applause was warm and sustained. But more importantly, he saw Emma's face glowing with pride, saw Richard nodding with satisfaction, and felt Lisa's presence like a benediction. After the show, as the crowd mingled and Jake signed CDs at the merch table, a young woman approached hesitantly. She looked to be in her mid-20s, wearing scrubs that suggested she'd come straight from a medical shift. "Mr. Harrison, I just wanted to thank you. My husband died 8 months ago in a car accident. We have a 3-year-old daughter. Your song, Emma's Eyes," her voice broke. "It's the only thing that's helped me feel less alone. It's like you understand exactly what I'm going through." Jake set down his Sharpie and gave her his full attention. "I'm so sorry for your loss. What's your daughter's name?" "Olivia." "That's beautiful. Is she your reason to keep going?" The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Every single day. Then you're going to be okay. It won't feel like it for a long time, but you're going to be okay. Because that little girl needs you, and that need will carry you further than you think possible." Jake meant every word, speaking from hard-won experience. The woman thanked him again and disappeared into the crowd, but the encounter stayed with Jake. This was why the music mattered. Not the chart positions or the festival bookings, but these human connections, these moments of shared understanding between strangers navigating similar darkness. As Jake packed up his guitar later that evening, Emma ran over and threw her arms around his waist. "Best show yet, Daddy." "Yeah? What made it the best?" "Because you looked happy. Really, really happy." Jake knelt down to her level, taking in her beautiful face. Lisa's eyes, his smile, her own unique spirit shining through. "You know what, Emma Bear? I am happy. I'm tired and stressed and never quite sure what's coming next. But I'm happy. And a lot of that is because I have you. And because you stopped being scared," Emma added, with 8-year-old wisdom. Jake laughed. "I'm still scared, sweetheart. All the time. But I'm doing it anyway. There's a difference." They walked out of the Bluebird Cafe into the warm Nashville night. Emma's hand in his guitar case slung over his shoulder. Richard was waiting by the car, talking animatedly on his phone about some new opportunity. Mrs. Kowalski and Daniel were discussing dinner options. Jake paused on the sidewalk and looked up at the Nashville sky, the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. Somewhere out there, Lisa existed in memory, and in Emma's features, and in the songs Jake had written about love and loss and carrying on. Somewhere out there were thousands of people streaming Emma's eyes, finding solace in a story that had started with unbearable pain and transformed into redemptive art. And somewhere in this city, maybe driving an Uber right now, maybe waiting tables, maybe playing dive bars to indifferent crowds, was the next person whose talent was waiting to be recognized, whose story was waiting to be told, whose moment was coming if they could just hold on long enough to see it arrive. Jake had been that person. Against impossible odds, through coincidence or fate or divine intervention, whatever you wanted to call it, his moment had come. And he'd been brave enough to seize it. "Come on, Daddy," Emma tugged his hand. "I'm hungry." "Me too, sweetheart. Let's go eat." They walked together toward whatever came next, Jake Harrison and his daughter. Two people learning to live with loss while refusing to let loss define their living. Behind them, the Bluebird Cafe's neon sign glowed against the darkness. And inside, another songwriter was taking the stage, playing their truth for whoever was willing to listen. The music continued. It always would. And somewhere on Nashville's rain-slicked streets, another Uber driver was picking up another passenger, unaware that their life was about to change with a simple question. "You play?"